Ishveen, it's great to have you with us. We're just talking backstage about the business, about what you do. To me, it's a fascinating concept because it's so illustrative of where sports are these days, where social media has sort of taken branding and the ability of individual athletes to brand. Let me start by asking you, if I put myself in the position of being, let's say I'm the third or 400 best driver in the US, I don't have any particular sort of profile through the sport. How does your company help me realize some of the benefits that potentially I could get by joining a brand?
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, sponsorship, the idea of sponsorship back in the day was always around, I'm going to go in, I'm going to pay an athlete, multi-year deals, all-encompassing, photo shoots, appearances, all of that. And what we realized with the rise of influencer marketing, digital marketing, social media was you're actually getting athletes who may not be in the top 5%, but they've got a following, they're on social, they want to do deals, they have interesting interests, right? Maybe they're vegan, or they support a certain mental health awareness month is their big thing. And so what we're doing is essentially giving them a voice and a forum to connect with brands who are legitimately also interested in that cause, and just through our platform connecting the two.
But what's the value to a brand, right? If I'm in a big brand and I want the marketing exposure of having a sports person, there are some who are very obviously marketable, right? Like if you think of LeBron James or Serena Williams or any sports person really at the top of their sport who can be identified. What do I get by having someone who is not very well known and perhaps has a social media following that is around the team they play for or something, but doesn't necessarily have any brand cachet themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for marketing people today, it's all about authentically reaching out to their core demographic and then thinking about new audiences, right? If you speak to any brand today, a lot of the legacy brands are saying, we need to reach out to diverse audiences, whether it's Hispanic or, younger males or whatever else. And I think that's where this all comes in, which is the power of the non-top 5% to be very hyper-focused on a certain demographic. So, we do a lot with the USA women's soccer team. The way that those girls influence young teens, female teens who are coming up in soccer, such a fast-growing sport. Or we've worked with like a David Ortiz and done stuff in Spanish with him, or Ivan Rodriguez, and these kind of things didn't really happen before. And so it's about finding these people who go, okay, you're going to speak to a certain demographic, geography, gender, ethnicity, locality that I couldn't really reach by myself through a really powerful voice.
Now, I saw on I think actually a Bloomberg story about your company. You've done 10,000 deals, or upwards of 10,000 deals with over 400 companies, which, as someone who spends most of my day job covering mergers and acquisitions, I know is a significant number of deals to get done. I wonder, when you're looking for the right qualities in an athlete to go with a particular brand, what metrics do you focus on, and how do you decide, all right, this is the person, even though they might not be well known, that fits your brand?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it actually really varies. Some people are just looking for the biggest following possible, right? Like, how many millions of followers does this athlete have? Some people are looking for great content. One of the things that we struggle with is sometimes that athletes are not naturally the best content creators. They're not always natural, which is why, again, obviously we saw today Alex Rodriguez, he's amazing in front of the camera, but a lot of his teammates are not comfortable even speaking English, right, from baseball days. And so there's different things that people are looking for, like where are their followers, or, do they have an authentic fit? And price is obviously a huge one. One of our investors is Serena Williams, and recently our team were kind of asking her questions, and, they were like, well, what do you look for in a deal? And she was like, well, ultimately, authenticity and all of that is great, but my time is really valuable, and so price does come into it as well.
So talk to me about authenticity, because that seems to be so crucial to any athlete that's wanting to establish a brand. But how do they maintain that while at the same time, if you're not a commercially successful athlete and you maybe, have a short career span, you're going to want to do as many deals as possible and sign up to as many brands as possible? Yeah,
I think it's a really good point. I would honestly say that there is so much competition. I mean, college NIL just opened up, right? And that introduced about 465,000 athletes into the ecosystem for sponsorship. And so one of the things we focus on is the fact that if you don't have authenticity, you probably won't get the ROI, and then you're not going to come back to sports. So actually, it is most important to try and find someone who's a good fit for you. Like if you're a car dealership selling second-hand cars, there is going to be an athlete out there who values the second-hand car market, or they remember their first ever second-hand car. So let's tap into that. Maybe there's a way to connect it to their past if it's not to their current, persona today.
And in terms of sort of who you're taking out of the equation, I mean, presumably the agents traditionally have negotiated a lot of these deals, taken a percentage of the fee at least. Is the idea over time that this model will be applicable to those bigger name athletes as well, who potentially in the past have always relied on their agents to source their branding and marketing deals?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of people get surprised by this, that a lot of our power users are agencies. And I kind of liken it a lot to real estate, where even though there are tools out there to sell your own house, list it, whatever else, most people rely on a real estate agent still. And the reason being is because the services they provide are far greater than just the transaction. And I think it's the same way in our world. Now, we have two amazing athletes on our cap table, but if we take them deals, they're still working through their team, even though they're investors in us. And the reason being is because, whether it's the agent provides more contractual services or looking at their player contracts or branding and stuff that we're not doing at this point in time. So we love working with agencies on that side, the talent agencies. Where the disruption probably happens is back in the day, you would need a internal sports marketing expert to help you with this transaction. It's almost like you don't need that as much anymore because of us.
When I think about sort of bigger name athletes signing up to these deals, they're often extremely lucrative, but they're also often multi-year. Presumably, when brands are looking at less well-known athletes, they're not going to want to take that kind of commitment, at least for the for the period of time. So how does that work? Is it just much more ephemeral, and the athletes know that going in, or how do you sort of manage that for them, that they may be only getting this gig for a one-off potentially?
Yeah, so good question. I'd say there's two sides to it. So obviously you love the idea of a multi-year deal, guaranteed income, we're going to build a brand for life. But we were talking about this before. Athletes often don't want to post on social. They don't want to do appearances when they're injured or when they're going through a bad part of their life. They've just been cut from an NFL team. The last thing they want to do is to start being like, hey, look at my amazing watch or whatever else. And so in a way, the good thing about a lot of the shorter, the 3 to 6 month that we do is, hey, actually you can control. Are you wanting to do it at that time? And it's really interesting. We see that with our athletes, that when they're playing well, they'll do more, even to the point that it's their wife's birthday. They know that they need to buy something special. We'll start seeing deals wanting to be done beforehand so they can spend a bit more. So it's quite interesting to see how it is so cyclical.
And on the sort of issue of social media, I guess that's going to be a big question for any brand going into this. Like, how do you, as the intermediary, guarantee the, I suppose, the quality control of the athlete they're signing up, that they're not going to suddenly start posting stuff on social media that is completely out of sync with what the brand is promoting?
I mean, that's a lot of what the technology that we've built controls this. And so, I'd say it's similar to Airbnb, where, before it was like a way to find your house, and then suddenly it was like, okay, your key exchange is going to go through here, your payments are going to go through here, and now there's so much security. You literally go on a flight to Brazil, and you believe that there's going to be a house waiting for you, right? And like the confidence that takes. And so I think in a similar way, we built a lot of tech to try and make the process so that you're not like, oh my gosh, like, is this actually going to happen? Is it going to be good? And so we put a lot of checks and balances, content approvals. We hold the money in escrow, so it's like an insurance. So we do a lot of this on our back end to ensure that the deals are good.
How do you think about that risk though? Because if you're carrying that, and presumably you don't have much sort of ability to control what the athlete does in their personal time.
It is sometimes an issue, like that example of, especially here in America, like an athlete gets cut on a team, they can move, literally move city like this. And we've had times where product's been sent to their house and they're like, we don't even live there anymore. And so I would say it's sometimes a little bit of an issue, but the good thing is that because we hold the money in escrow, like the worst case scenario is we're returning the brand their money with a few apologies, which it seems to be quite a good insurance in a world where actually before us, you would have had to have spent at least 50% up front and kind of lost that, right? Or in court to try and get that back.
Traditionally, when I think of the sort of the biggest brands on the planet that have used athletes heavily in promotional stuff, it tends to be brands that do something, you know, that is closely aligned with athletics, whether it's sportswear or makers of sports equipment, etc. But now we're increasingly seeing, you know, CPG and other industries take up athletes as brand ambassadors. How important is that to the growth of a business like yours, that we're seeing these sort of non-sports related businesses becoming much more concerned with having athletes as part of their sort of overall promotion?
Yeah, I would say absolutely huge. I mean, there's a few different reasons. I mean, crypto.com, right? Like, tangential to sports, but you know, is a different vertical, and they are owning this weekend, and that's happening across the board. And I'd say the main reason why is, one of the things is that a lot of the old school sponsors of sports, right? Your Verizons or your Fords, like Ford just pulled out of NFL, like, someone needs to replace that, and a lot of these new age startups, your new unicorns, are coming in to do that. And for us, what's interesting is influencer marketing, you know, I talked about it before, billion-dollar industry, grew up in the last 10 years, if that, very heavily skewed on the female audience. If you think about even like male reality TV stars or male models, a lot of their demographic is female. And so what happens is, a lot of the love we get, so we do all of the work for like a Walmart, Stitch Fix, Foot Locker, a lot of them, when they think about speaking to their male demographic on social, no one else is really able to do that apart from sports. Maybe rappers, country, like a few different music verticals, but sports really helps out. And so the love that we're seeing is like that geographic, but also that demographic, that male focus. And that's why we get, I mean, by far, number one category is apparel and fashion.
But if the audience is largely female, are you also skewing towards more female athletes, or is it still mostly concentrated on male sports?
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, it's interesting, of our 15,000 athletes, about 50% are in deals, 50% are male and 50% female. But in terms of signups to our website, it's about 25% female. So even though there's a lot fewer female athletes, they're getting more deal flow. And I would say, back to the point of, they produce better content, their engagement is higher, they're a little bit more reliable, no offense to male athletes. So I love doing female athlete deals, for sure.
And that's a really interesting point. They're producing the content themselves. So this isn't them doing a sort of an organized and curated marketing campaign. This is them being paid to sort of do what they would be doing anyway, but just do it under the, you know, or in connection to a particular brand.
Yeah, and so if you think about it, a lot of younger athletes, college athletes, are naturally more, you know, they're on TikTok, they're producing great content, but a lot of your NBA or NFL players, like, they didn't grow up in a sphere of taking selfies at home, right? In fact, like, that would not have been encouraged for them. So sometimes when we do campaigns, it's like, maybe you should smile in that picture, it'll look better. And so it is harder with the traditional male athletes who are a little bit older to get them to produce like organic, naturally good content.
I get told that a lot when people take pictures too. So just on that, when you're, I suppose, training or helping athletes think through like how they should curate, how they should manage their own brand, is that, I mean, what's the sort of investment thesis there? Because if you're spending a lot of time doing that and someone is only getting a few, you know, not very high dollar value deals a year, how do you justify that?
Yeah, so again, I'd say this is where our agencies really help out, because they're often the ones who are guiding the athlete, and they're doing it at scale for us. The beauty of tech is, you know, we have a dashboard. Every single athlete who logs in sees this dashboard. We've got little tips on there like, hey, think about your lighting. You know, here's a great post. You know, have a look at this. And so it is up to us to educate them, because, you know, we essentially lose out. But I mean, some of the deals we do are like $100, $200. The margin for us is so small that we can't be doing it one by one. And so we're always thinking about how do we create tech or scale the education piece.
And just before we wrap up, talk to me about growth and sort of other markets that you might be looking into. I know you and I, before we came out, discussed the Indian market around cricket and obviously the IPO, and it's just phenomenal success there. But are there other parts of the world that you would look at as potential opportunities here?
Yeah, what I love about sports is that it's so global. I mean, this event, right, like this weekend. And so I think for us, there's a real opportunity to make sure sponsorship is truly global. At the moment, sponsorship is quite localized. You know, the Boston Celtics will get Boston brands, and, you know, the NBA is opening that up and whatever else. But I think for us, that's huge. So we just opened up our UK office. UK already powers EMEA. We're thinking about like our Asia Pac strategy. So along with geography though, we're also thinking about music. It's the same problems. It's really interesting. A lot of the same agents. So that for us is really interesting. College NIL, you know, touched upon is huge. So lots of different things for expansion.
But isn't sponsorship always going to be necessarily localized? Because otherwise you lose that resonance. If you have a brand that has nothing to do with the city where the team is based or nothing to do with where the athlete is sort of well known, why would they want to sponsor them?
Well, think about how many brands are there in Miami this weekend who would have potentially loved to get like a Danny Ricciardo or even a Lewis Hamilton to do something with them. But because those guys, their agents are not in the US or they're not here, they have no clue. Athletes are constantly traveling, like golf. They barely spend any time at home, right? And so in a way, it is a localized strategy, but where they're going versus being like, where's their home base?
Ishfeen, fascinating conversation. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, everyone.